NewsX World, and here are the top headlines. BBC Chair Samir Shah is expected to apologise to Parliament after Director General Tim Davie and new CEO Deborah Turness resigned. The move follows revelations that Panorama misleadingly edited a speech of Donald Trump linked to the Capitol riots. The US Senate has moved forward on a bill to reopen the government until the 30th of January after a record 40-day shutdown. The measure includes 3 funding packages and now requires House approval before reaching President Trump's desk. Around 200 fighters have been killed in clashes between Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa terrorists in northeast Nigeria. Fighting erupted near Lake Chad as rival factions battled for control of territory. Thailand has suspended a US-brokered peace agreement with Cambodia after landmine explosion injured 2 Thai soldiers near the border. Officials say that follow-up talks and prisoner releases under the deal have been put on hold. China has lifted export controls on car chip maker Nexperia and paused bans on key semiconductor materials to the US. Beijing says that the move, part of a deal with Washington, aims to stabilize trade after recent agreements to cut tariffs. Super typhoon Fengguang has killed 4 people in the Philippines after battering Luzon with fierce winds and torrential rain. Authorities say that more than 1 million people were evacuated before the storm made landfall. Malaysian authorities are searching the Andaman Sea for dozens of missing Rohingya after a boat carrying refugees from Myanmar capsized, killing at least 11 people. Police say that hundreds had set sail 2 weeks ago, fleeing persecution and hunger. Israel has confirmed receiving the remains of Hedar Golden, a soldier killed in Gaza in 2014, ending an 11-year ordeal for his family. Golden was killed hours after ceasefire took effect and his body had been held by Hamas since the war. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. According to multiple reports, FBI Director Kash Patel quietly visited Beijing last week to discuss fentanyl and law enforcement issues following a recent summit between Presidents Trump and Xi that highlighted US-China consensus on the opioid crisis. Patel reportedly held talks with Chinese officials on Saturday, although neither government has officially announced the trip. Now, this information comes as China plans to adjust its list of drug-related precursor chemicals and require export licenses for some chemicals to the US, Canada, and Mexico. Meanwhile, President Trump cut tariffs on Chinese goods linked to fentanyl from 20% to 10% after the recent summit in Busan. Chinese officials continue to defend their fentanyl regulation record and have criticized Washington's approach as coercive. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Peter Baum, foreign editor of Weekly Blitz in London. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We do know that China is the largest producer of fentanyl, and we've also seen a record amount of deaths taking place in the United States of America due to the fentanyl crisis. It's in fact the #1 cause of deaths in the US. In light of all of this, we've also seen Donald Trump take up this issue rather vociferously, whether it's on Truth Social, whether it's through press conferences. The Chinese have so far attempted to distance themselves, calling Washington's actions coercive and the crisis a responsibility that lies with the US administration itself. Now, in the aftermath of the Trump-Xi meeting, there are reports that Kash Patel quietly visited Beijing last week. What do you make of this visit? How significant is it? And could we see further action being taken by the Chinese in order to curb the fentanyl exports that are taking place, the transnational shipments that take place?
Good day to you, Pia. Lovely to be with you and your viewers again. I think the story here is the fact that the trip by the FBI Director Kash Patel to China was made secret. Usually, when such a high-profile visit is undertaken, the White House and the related press mob, the press pack, would be all over something like this, and even their sources would have been made aware. Even the new media would have some kind of information fed back to it that such a trip was taking place. But the fact that it was held was so secretive that no one knew about it, and only now, some 2 days later after the event, we're beginning to hear about it, indicates something more was going on than we have been told about at the moment. Now, it looks as if the trip was a success because the dialogue regarding tariffs has toned down significantly since the trip was made. And clearly, the Trump administration has a real issue with the supply, distribution, circulation of fentanyl within certain US communities and cities.
Yes.
So by all accounts, it was, from the feedback we currently have, the trip regarding the reason for why it was undertaken seems to have been successful. But what is most interesting is why it was held in secret anyway. Why no news issues, why no news outlets knew about it, and even if they did, why they held back on reporting the story. That seems to me to be the most interesting factor regarding the visit. But from what we can understand from all our sources at the moment, it seems to have gone down very well. By all accounts, Patel got on well with his Chinese counterpart, and the situation regarding tariffs seems to be less potent than it was. And certainly the main issue, the fentanyl issue, China will definitely take into consideration the concerns that the Trump administration have.
Absolutely, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other crucial information. Iran has now dismissed accusations by the United States that Tehran had attempted to kill the Israeli ambassador to Mexico, describing the claim as absurd. Now, according to the Israeli and U.S. officials, Mexican authorities, with assistance from the United States and Israeli intelligence agencies, thwarted an alleged plot by Iran to assassinate the Israeli ambassador to Mexico. As per U.S. officials, the elite Quds Force of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps initiated the plot to kill Ambassador Einat Kran-Snega in late 2024, and that it was disrupted this year. The plot allegedly included recruiting operatives out of Iran's embassy in Venezuela, whose president Nicolas Maduro has a tactical alliance with Tehran. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Peter Boehm. Of course, these revelations have been quite stunning. This plot to kill the Israeli ambassador to Mexico had come to light after it was made public by the Americans and the Israelis itself. How do you think this could then impact the negotiations that are taking place as far as Iran's nuclear question is concerned? Do you think now with these revelations, US has some sort of leverage over Iran, which has been keeping the door open so far despite the strikes that are taking place on 3 of its facilities and the snapback sanctions that were imposed?
Yeah, this is a very interesting story. It would not be the first time that Iran has tried to undertake something like this. We know that they were successful with the attack on the Jewish Community Center in Argentina.
Yes.
We know that recently Australia thwarted a terror attack by Iranians on Jewish communities, and very recently something similar has been done here in the UK. So this would be a common practice for the Iranian theocracy to carry out using operatives in other countries. Now, what I find a little bit strange about this whole thing, although it's been generally acknowledged now by all media that this was a failed attack, and naturally Iran are denying it, as they do all such similar and previous incidents. What I find interesting is that they tried to use Mexico, because Mexico, despite having a Jewish a prime minister in Scheinbaum, are not particularly friendly towards Israel. They are very anti-Netanyahu, and they've made that clear. Um, Mexico is really one country where I think if this is a true story, and it seems to be, I think politically they've screwed up here, because Mexico was one of those countries that and usually votes against Israel in the United Nations, sometimes abstains, but mainly she will vote with the Muslim bloc. So I think that politically, maybe they thought Mexico was a soft target, and they do need a win for their extreme domestic audience, because Iran is politically isolated, militarily weak at the moment, and because of the issues surrounding the lack of water through climate change and mismanagement, is going through a very hard time domestically. So she did need a big win, but I would be staggered if they chose Mexico as a target, because, as I say, Mexico has been rather anti-Israel in the last, realistically, 10 to 12 years. So I think if it seems to be that it has credibility, this plot, but I think Iran have politically made a fundamental error of judgment here, which is going to further isolate them from those countries in South America, which, if not pro-Palestinian, was certainly not pro-Israel. And I think Scheinbaum's cabinet will take a very different view of Israeli-Palestinian affairs going forward.
Indeed, and what do you also make of the plot allegedly included in recruiting operatives out of Iran's embassy in Venezuela? We do know that the United States does not recognize the Maduro government in Caracas, and Venezuela has been it has a tacit alliance with Iran as well. How do you read into this aspect of the revelations?
Right. Other than Colombia and previously Bolivia, which has now changed government to certainly a pro-Israel government from a pro-Palestinian one, Venezuela is the one country where Iran feels comfortable because of the ideology of the Maduro regime. So in that case, it makes perfectly good sense that they would use Venezuela to plot, to house, to give safe haven to any Iranian operatives that were responsible for carrying out such an attack. Now, this will further isolate Venezuela, of course, and the pressure is certainly on Maduro from the Trump administration, who, let's face it, really would like to see a regime change in Venezuela, using the excuse of the drug trafficking from Venezuela into the United States as a reason to do that. He's now calling drug traffickers terrorists, which under international law, although he's carrying out attacks on these boats, he could possibly stand up. But the fundamental reason that Iran operated the operatives out of Venezuela is because Venezuela is the most friendly government towards the Iranian regime, and that would make absolute sense. So I'd like to see where we are in this story 24 hours down the road, but on the face of it, it looks as if it was a credible plot thwarted. But I think fundamentally, if Iran has made a mistake politically by trying to carry out such an attack on Mexico, which, as I say, was not exactly friendly towards Israel.
All right, sir. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time and putting that into perspective for our viewers. Meanwhile, we're shifting focus away from what's transpiring towards what's taking place in Indonesia. Tragic news from Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, where a school mosque explosion left 96 people injured with 29 hospitalized, according to the city police, has now brought in some further developments. Authorities have stated that the blast occurred at a senior high school, number 72, during Friday prayers, and preliminary findings suggest that the suspect may be a student reportedly bullied by peers. Investigators also found an unidentified powder at the suspect's home, which is now being examined. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto hinted that violent video games might have influenced this particular incident. While no fatalities have been reported so far, police are still probing the causes and have not ruled out the possibility of a terrorist attack. More details are expected as the probe into this tragedy continues. With us on the broadcast is Wan Robin, journalist from Narasi TV in Jakarta in Indonesia. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us. I want to understand from you, what is the latest as far as the probe is concerned regarding the 17-year-old suspect who's been nabbed? What sort of evidence have the police found so far? We have been receiving reports that some powder has been found at the home of the suspect.
Among the victims, the suspect, a 17 years old male student of the school, also sustained serious injuries and is under medical care to this day. So he has not been interrogated yet by the police, but the police said the perpetrator was carrying 7 explosives. 4 of them exploded at two locations, while the other 3 did not. Investigators have also reviewed CCTV footage showing the suspect's activities before the explosion. At least there are 2 pieces of evidence that the police have gathered. First, there are explosive powders, like what you said. The police also found notes that were possibly related to the motive of the perpetrator, but what is written has not been announced yet to the people.
Indeed, the officials have not yet revealed a lot, but they have stated, as you've mentioned as well, that they seized explosive powder and some sort of extremist writings as well. What's known about this so far? Has there been any revelation about the motive, any hints that the police has been giving?
Investigations led by the police are ongoing until now to determine the motive behind this act, with bullying and potential terrorism as key points under scrutiny. But nothing has yet been announced regarding the motive. But the strongest suspicion that is circulating right now in the public is that the perpetrator is a bullying victim. So no real link to the terrorism until now from the police.
Indeed, and as you've mentioned, the police is still keeping the scope for possible links to radical and hate groups open as well. Have they emphasized anything further on this front, or have they just left it at this particular statement? Have they revealed anything about possible links, or have they just stated that this is one possibility that they are looking into at the moment?
There are still no motive that has been released by the police, but I think the investigators look for all possibilities. But so far, no conclusive evidence of direct links to hate or radical groups has been disclosed publicly. Yet the investigation is ongoing to uncover further evidence regarding the motive and potential accomplices. But some observers suspect that this incident was not related to terrorism. There is also a suspicion by the government that the perpetrator was influenced by online games that contain violent content. So the government is discussing plans to restrict online games that contain violent content to children, for example, like PUBG game. But so far, the strongest suspicion is all about the bullying suspicions that that the perpetrator is a victim of the bullying.
Indeed, since you're on the ground, I also wanted to understand from you, we do know that there were 96 people who were injured, there were 29 who were hospitalized as well. Is their condition becoming better at the moment? And also, what sort of reactions are we getting from parents, since this has taken place near a school as well? What's the conversation largely taking place on social media in Indonesia regarding this particular incident?
Yes, at least 96 people were injured, most of whom are students. The injured suffered burns, shrapnel wounds, and other trauma. With until November 10, 29 victims still receiving medical treatment in hospitals, and one victim is in critical condition and undergoing surgery. But after 3 days from the incident, the condition is getting better until now. And about the parents also worried about this incident, and they demand the police and the government to find out uh, about the motive of this incident, and they want the government to assure that this incident will not going to happen again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking our time and, of course, sharing all those details, putting that into perspective on what's transpired as far as this tragedy is concerned for all of our viewers. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to more developments coming in. We're now learning that at least 13 people have lost their lives after a boat carrying undocumented migrants sank near the border between Thailand and Malaysia. Now, according to sources, 13 people have been rescued and still hundreds are missing from a group of 300 people, most of whom are Rohingyas who left Myanmar's impoverished Rakhine state 2 weeks ago on a larger vessel before splitting onto smaller boats. Now, rescue efforts have entered a second day, with the search area expanded from 170 to 256 square nautical miles. And according to experts, the search could even last for 7 days. Members of the mainly Muslim Rohingya minority continue to flee persecution in Buddhist majority Myanmar, where they are denied citizenship and are treated as outsiders. Listen in to what Langkawi District Police Chief had to say.
8 November tahun ini, jam lebih kurang dalam 9:30 pagi, Balai Polis Air Hangat telah menerima maklumat melalui panggilan telefon daripada seorang individu yang bertugas di jeti Teluk Ewa. Beliau telah dimaklumkan oleh master kapal Hong Lin 1 daripada Filipin yang dalam perjalanan untuk mengambil simen di jeti Teluk Ewa telah menemui 3 individu iaitu 2 lelaki dan 1 perempuan terapung di laut berhampiran Teluk Cincin, Kuala Teriang. Hasil siasatan awal mendapati bahawa kesemua individu yang ditahan terdiri daripada warga Myanmar, etnik Rohingya dan Bangladesh. Mereka memaklumkan bahawa telah menaiki sebuah kapal kayu daripada kawasan Butidong, Myanmar bersama lebih kurang 300 orang penumpang dengan tujuan untuk masuk ke Malaysia. Perjalanan tersebut dipercayai telah bermula kira-kira 2 minggu yang lepas. Pada 6 November 2025, kesemua penumpang ini telah dilaporkan dipindahkan ke dalam 2 buah bot barasingan di tengah laut. Sebuah bot kecil membawa sekitar 70 orang, manakala bot yang lebih besar membawa kira-kira 230 orang.
Joining us on the broadcast is Noor Aziza, Rohingya Maya Fuinor Network from Sydney. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We've just heard what the police chief in Langkawi had to say. They had in fact received a call on the 8th of November, and they learned that this larger vessel that had left Myanmar earlier had in fact set sail 2 weeks ago, and this distressed call was received 2 days ago. We do know that so far 13 people have been found dead and dozens still remain missing after this boat capsized. I want to understand from you, what details have you been able to confirm about this tragedy up until now?
It's honestly heartbreaking. Today I received videos that were really hard to watch. Children and babies floating lifeless on the sea, some still holding onto debris, others calling out for help that never came. Al Jazeera headline today stated that 1 dead, dozens missing after a migrant boat sinks off Malaysia coast. This barely captures the horror of this. At least 11 people are confirmed dead, around 280 are still missing, mostly of women and children. What people don't realize is this could have easily been me, my sisters, my nieces, my mum. These people have fled bullets and burning villages in Rakhine State in Myanmar. There is an ongoing genocide that is very much still active that they're trying to escape, only to drown in the ocean. Their bodies swallowed by the same sea. they believed would only lead them to safety. All they wanted was to live with dignity, not to die nameless in the sea. And just to add to that, according to UNHCR, more than 650 Rohingya have gone missing or died in the last year and a half, and that's hundreds of lives lost while the world just watches completely silent. So reports say that this boat carried around 300 people. It broke near Langkawi, Malaysia, and only a small number of people were rescued. The rest are still missing. Every hour that passes makes it less likely that they'll be found alive.
Indeed, and several Rohingya refugees continue to take these deadly sea routes because of the continued bombardment from the junta. I want to understand from you, are conditions worsening again in the camps and in Myanmar at large? Not much information is available because not much information is allowed to trickle outside from Myanmar itself, considering the tight cap that has been put by the military junta on free press over there.
Yes, absolutely. Things are definitely worsening. Inside Myanmar, the Arakan Army, an ethnic Rakhine armed group, now controls over 90% of Rakhine State. They once fought the military, but now they've turned their weapons onto the Rohingya too. Villages have been burned, children set on fire, women enduring rape, and Rohingya men and boys forcibly recruited. The Myanmar military, they've always been the main perpetrator of the genocide, but now the Rohingya are being attacked from both sides. The violence has changed shape, but not its purpose. It's to completely eradicate us, the Rohingya, from the planet Earth. I saw the aftermath myself this year when I visited the Rohingya refugee camps in Bangladesh and Indonesia this year. In Bangladesh, I met a young boy. His name is Abdur Rahman. He was only 3 years of age. He lost his leg in a bombing. His father was shot dead in front of him while they tried to flee. Now, when I looked at him, I saw my own nephew. In Indonesia and Malaysia, I met mothers whose children drowned at sea. One woman, she told me that she still dreams of her son calling her name from the sea. I met many women who endured gender-based violence and rape by human traffickers on the boat. The camps are overcrowded, food rations have been cut, there's no access to work or education in Bangladesh, in the largest refugee camp in the world. People are living in limbo, and the genocide continues to, according to the United Nations, the most persecuted people in the entire world. So when they risk the sea, it's not out of desire to enjoy a 5-star hotel in Malaysia or Indonesia. It's out of desperation to survive.
Absolutely. Amidst all of this, we've seen certain rights groups coming out and criticizing certain regional governments for failing to coordinate rescue efforts. Do you believe Thailand and Malaysia are doing enough at the moment? And with respect to this particular incident in terms of their response to this tragedy and the larger crisis that the Rohingya face?
No, absolutely not. We've been watching the same tragedy unfold for over a decade now. The same routes, the same traffickers, the same silence from governments and civil society who say they didn't know until it was too late. Malaysia and Thailand know these routes. These boats leave every single year. Yet there's still no regional rescue plan, no coordinated response, and no safe landing for refugees. Governments keep saying they're combating human trafficking, but you cannot fight traffickers while criminalizing the victims that are escaping the very genocide. Refugees are not criminals. They are desperate people with no safe path left. But the lack of public support for the Rohingya across ASEAN is deeply painful. It enables policies that continue to dehumanize a people, again, the UN has called the most persecuted in the world. Yet we've seen millions in Malaysia and Indonesia rise for Gaza, which I deeply respect. Yet where is that same energy for a genocide unfolding right here in our region, 3 hours flight away from Malaysia? In my organization, we've monitored and assessed online hate speech. And what we found is a complete oxymoron. Real profiles from across ASEAN spreading anti-Rohingya hate, calling us ungrateful, lazy, and black refugees, while falling for decades of propaganda in Myanmar and beyond. Yet in those same profiles, you'll see on their profile it says Free Gaza in their bios. An oxymoron that exposes the very contradiction between their words of solidarity and their acts of hate. So we need people to see this very hypocrisy, to realize that humanity can never be selective. The Rohingya deserve the same compassion, same solidarity that others receive. Because sympathy won't bring back those lost at sea today or yesterday, only action will, coordinated rescue efforts, humanitarian visas, and regional accountability.
Absolutely. With that, I'd like to thank you, ma'am, for taking out time and, of course, putting all of that into perspective for our viewers who are watching the broadcast. On that note, we're shifting our focus to what's taking place in Australia. Australia has now announced a new law that will ban children under the age of 16 from using popular social media platforms. The new rules set to come into effect on 10th December 2025. It will prevent minors from creating or maintaining accounts on platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, X, YouTube, Reddit, and Kik. This move, which is a part of the Online Safety Amendment Bill 2024, is aimed at improving online safety for young people, protecting them from dangers such as cyberbullying, harmful content, and the addictive effects of social media algorithms. Moreover, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese insists that the law is designated to protect the mental health and development of youth, as research links extensive social media use to increased anxiety, poor sleep, and reduced attention spans amongst children and teens. However, platforms like Discord and Twitch, which allow communication but do not focus mainly on social interaction, will be exempt. Other excluded platforms include Messenger and WhatsApp, and streaming services such as Roblox and Stream. More news coming in from Slovakia. In a tragedy, two trains have now crashed in Slovakia after one ran into the other, injuring dozens of passengers. The crash occurred on the route between the capital, Bratislava, and Pezinok, now about 20 kilometers northeast of the city. Police has confirmed that there was no head-on collision or derailment, with preliminary reports suggesting rear-end impact. Passengers described the incident as a loud bang when the trains collided. You can clearly see the chaos that has taken place. We've learned that there are injured who are now being dragged out at the moment. And the Interior Minister, Matusuthat Estok, has stated that 11 people have been taken to the hospital for medical attention, while no casualties have been reported so far. This accident is the second in Slovakia in the past month. Two trains, remember, collided in eastern Slovakia on the 13th of October, injuring 91 people. Well, viewers, due to paucity of time, this is all we have for this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.